Hi, this is Audrey, and welcome to 1-800-Leadership. And I'm the Chief Content Officer of Amplified Voices, a media company founded by Pete Carroll, host of Belonging and Leadership and Everyday Leadership Skills podcast, and co-host with Pete Carroll on Conversations from the Heart. And with us today, we have Resmaa Menakem, who is a trauma healing expert, a New York Times bestseller of My Grandmother's Hands, and also coming out with a new book called Quaking America in April. Mm-hmm. And we'll be talking about that at some point. But we wanted to get together to be able to have a conversation, considering that the topic of this live is that taking very current topics and being able to unpack them as lessons to be learned for ourselves as leaders, for those that are out there driving things, wanting to make a difference, living purposeful, driven lives in terms of our endeavors and impact, and accountable for people. So we're accountable for culture and we're taking care of our people. And this is truly a very powerful and impactful incident for us to unpack here today, Resmaa. And there's so much here. You know, there's the perspective of Jada and being a woman, being a Black woman, being someone with an illness, and the kind of culture that we have, that jokes are something to just, it's okay, take it in stride, don't be so serious, don't be so thin-skinned. There's the perspective, of course, and looking at Chris Rock, who maybe everybody doesn't know, but who has historical trauma. His trauma background is around being assaulted, and which incidentally enough, look at what had happened to him, right? But has done a tremendous amount of therapy and work that he's openly shared and talked about in his background and what he's been through in his life. And then you have Will, who also openly shared about the abusive father and what he went through and the whole persona that he built to be able to survive that. Mm-hmm. And again, you have so many layers, but one of the ones that I want to start with in being able to talk about this is everyone else that watched. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something, and I want to start with it because I think that's something that we're missing. We've come out of a place that our reaction, our very divisive reaction of picking sides, mm-hmm. right and wrong. Right and wrong is not going to get us healed. Mm-hmm. It's got to be all of the nuances inside of there. We've got to be able to not just move on from things and forget about it, but stop and talk about it and process it and feel it in our bodies and see what's going on. And one of the things that I believe, Resmaa, and I'd love to hear from you, given your expertise, but one of the things that I believe and have learned, that trauma doesn't just happen to the person that the incident happens to. In many cases, people that have observed trauma, that have watched it, that's right, can experience greater trauma. Mm-hmm. By being the observer, is a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. Mm-hmm. And also that people don't take care of them because, like, nothing happened to you. What are you upset about?
Right.
And so I want to start there because I believe that all of our reactions, every possible thing from shock to rage to hate to pain to sadness to all of it, is a perfect setting. And I want to kick off this one, which I think was perfect about speaking of someone's reaction. Late night comedian Amber Ruffin posted something on social media, and what she said was, "I had hoped that it was a bit, but that quickly turned to dust. A dark sadness filled my home, a darkness I couldn't escape. Had the Oscars lost its magic? We tried to stay engaged, but there was no more show after that. Mm-hmm. The once fluffy couch I was sitting on suddenly felt hard and unwelcoming. My heated blanket went cool. The sweet tea I was enjoying lost all its flavor. The Oscars took everything I thought I knew and flushed it down the toilet. In this new world, could I survive?" And I know clearly, she's mentioning the Oscars, but she's not talking about the Oscars. She's talking about reality and the reality right now. And so, Resmaa, please help. Please start to speak to, this is I'm just
Yeah,
heartbroken,
yeah,
truly heartbroken.
yeah. Is I'm glad you opened it up like this, because I think in this kind of drone about who's right and who's wrong, and what did this is what Chris did in the past, this is what Will talked about, this is what Jada this, and all this different type of stuff, and alopecia and all that. One of the things that gets lost is the when you watch that moment, when you watch that slap, if you slow it down, you can literally see Chris Rock's heartbreak.
Yeah. Yeah.
like for real, for real. You can see when Chris tells the joke, you can see Jada's heartbreak. Like when she sits back, she kind of goes and she sits back, right?
Right.
When you watch and you slow it down and you watch Will both get walk up on the stage, you can see the historical, the
Yes.
intergenerational, the persistent institutional, and his personal lived experiences walking towards Chris. Right? You can see it if you slow it down. When he gets back into his seat and he's screaming and he's yelling from the audience, you can see the hurt and the pain and the confusion and the disorientation, right? You can see all of that. And one of the things that happens is that we saw it too. Those of us in Black and Indigenous bodies saw that. Those of us in other bodies of culture saw that, and something sunk.
Yeah.
And that's the rupture that I believe a lot of times we don't tend to. We just once the news cycle uses all of the life force out of it, then we just keep going along. This is, when I talk about the new book that I got, My Grandmother's Hands, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about seminal moments that we have to spend time with, that we have to get reps with, that we have to come back and we have to work with it, not argue about who's right and who's wrong and who should have slapped him. And if he did that to me, this is what I would have did. Not none of that. But what does it take for a Black man to be confused and be hurt by something that another Black man says or does, and choose tenderness towards that Black body, as opposed to what's been stuffed down our throats, and that is destroy that Black body? And so I think when I'm talking about communal rupture and communal repair, I'm talking about what, like one of the ways that you saw repair try to happen in that situation is when you saw two older Black men go over there to Chris
Hmm.
and say, "Come here, man." You know what I mean? And talk to him. I don't even need to know what the conversation. I know there were two older Black men in Hollywood that said, "You know what? That right there needs repair." That
To
had
Will. You mean
to
to Will
Will,
when they went
to
over to
Will.
Will? Yeah.
That's right. That when Denzel Washington and Tyler Perry went over
Right.
there,
Right.
that was about an attempt at a communal repair.
Yeah.
When Charlemagne reached out to Chris Rock and said, "Brother, I'm checking on you, man."
Right.
Those are the communal repairs that have to happen, and we have to see that, we have to hear that, because we all make mistakes in ways that on the front part look like um you'll never be able to recover from it. But
Right.
one of the things that helps us recover is other bodies, right?
Mm,
That's what helps us recover, is that
right.
is that I have other bodies around me that hold me, that check me, but check me in a way that's moored in community, that's moored in peoplehood. And so my heart broke, just like what the sister said. My heart broke watching that. Things tightened for me, right? Um, and things tightened for Chris, and things tightened for Jada, and things tightened for Will. And we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about, well, the Academy is going to strip him of this, or the person's going to strip him of that. They can do that. But us, what we have to do is we have to go about the work of repairing and communally repairing. And we don't have this country has taught us that the Black body, and we've ingested this stuff too, that the Black body is where we do our dirt, right? We've ingested that too. You know, we've been impacted by seeing all of the hangings and having towns like Greenwood destroyed. I mean, like the terror that our bodies experience is a real terror. And so for me, I hope it is my hope that we begin to turn towards this and not turn away from it in 2 weeks, that we keep coming back to this and find ways to extricate the healing that has to happen, because the feralness that has happened is historical. And that's what you saw. It is intergenerational. That's what you saw. That was the pit in your stomach when you're watching it.
Yeah.
Right. That has never been addressed when it comes to Black bodies. So that's my first piece on it.
I know a lot of people are saying, well, I mean, that could have been Tom Hanks and Ricky Gervais, or what if that was a woman up there and he slapped him? And I think these are ways in which these comparisons don't actually allow us to start healing and start to understand, because creating scenarios that didn't actually happen mean nothing. They're just a way to have conversations in your head and never locate yourself in your body.
That's right.
And it is relative and important to truly absorb that happened between two Black men.
That is
right. And around in a dynamic with a Black female.
That's exactly
and
right.
In family with their marriage, right? In family, in them knowing each other for a long time. Also in them having accomplished so much, because there is also inside of the paradigm so much about, well, you know, you should just make something of yourself and get over it. And when you're successful, things will be fine. And I was having this conversation with my son last night. You know, it's really important for me to continue conversations with him as a Black man, for me to hear him out, for me to listen, for me to keep expressing love. Even last night he was like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. I was like, no, we're going to talk about it. We're going to continue to keep talking about it. It doesn't have to be with me, but we're going to keep talking about it. And I encourage you to. And it was only in this time, it was like our fourth time addressing it. And this was the time where he really got present to his heart, like really letting it sink in his heart, and just saying how heartbreaking that was, that here were two men that he looked up to, that had become something of so much of their dreams, of their tenacity, overcoming so much. And to watch that pain, to watch that just assault, it wasn't, like he said, it's not like it's shocking to me in it happening, because we understand violence.
Right.
There's certain cultures that understand it more and can pass off more, like, that's nothing. I've seen this and such. But, you know, this didn't happen at a barbecue.
Yeah, exactly.
This was also one of the things that with this pain about it. It didn't happen at a family barbecue. That in of itself would be very painful and upsetting. Right. This happened on the front stage for the world to watch, in a setting that was revered with accomplishment, with achievement. There was a historical accomplishment with him winning an Oscar as a Black male. I mean, again, this was something that, to look at this, and I think this is an important part, and it doesn't mean that if you're white or other races, you also shouldn't examine the pain and the history of abuse in your own family and your own trauma. But I do think in our culture, with what's happening, I told Christian, I don't even see this having happened. If this was the award 6 years ago, I don't see this happening. Even if the same joke in the same setting happened, I do think there's something to be said about why this happened in the condition that we're in the world right now as human beings, what's happened over the last few years. And this is something you could truly see. As angry as people are with Will for what he did, I see a person so in pain, that's probably just now realizing. And with Chris, knowing that he was talking about having gone to therapy for a few years, almost every single day. Yep. Right? I can see a man who had dealt with so much of his trauma, the way that he handled it,
Mm-hmm.
while still being in shock. I don't think
Yeah.
it was, people saying that he handled it so well. But again, I don't want to go into too much processing them without examining ourselves. But taking each of their perspectives as a way for us to look in our own selves and our own lives. I'd love to hear more. How do you take incidents like that and start to examine yourself and your own emotions in your body to start to experience?
Yeah. So I do want to say one thing about the way he handled it.
Chris.
Chris handled it.
Yeah.
You know, I think in this. So let me just say this. I don't. When it comes to those two brothers, I grew up with them two brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
I literally grew up with them, right? So when I talk about that there was a communal rupture that took place, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a black man hitting another black man. I don't give a shit if it was in front of white folks, right? That's not the thing. The thing for me is that um, that was a seminal moment for those three people in their relationship, and that the tightening and and watching it, like the secondary and trauma from you know uh, um, um, from viewing that, right? It was like, and maybe trauma is not the word, maybe stuckness or maybe a constriction that happened, right? We have to slow down enough to examine that. Both Chris Rock and Will Smith. When I listen to Chris Rock talk about his own trauma past, right? Whenever I'm working with bodies, I never just start with with just the personal lived experiences. Those men were born in a structure and in a society where the access to tenderness for black people and black men is not something that, right. And so but what happens is when we focus so heavily on what Will did and how that played out, and what we end up doing is taking off the table any semblance of how white body supremacy impacted that, right? How did growing up in a society where the white body, and particularly the white male body, is standardized to the degree that everybody kind of swims in that water, and we ingest that too. And so when you watch Will walking up a stage, like when you watch him walking up a stage, you don't know what's getting ready to happen. You assume it's part of the thing.
Right.
You assume, right, and you can watch Chris assuming that it's part of the thing. That's how you know when you see that much energy show up in a situation where it doesn't require. I've heard people say this: you get a paper cut, but then you bleed like an artery was cut. Right. And that's the energy. That's all of that historical energy, persistent institutional. That's all of that showing up at the same time. And what we do is we go right to judging the person rather than saying, oh shit, I got that in me too.
Right.
I got that. That's in me too. It may not have been uncorked yet, or it may have been uncorked and what nobody watching it, but I got that. And so how do I begin to do the work both individually and communally? So the texture and the weight and the volume gets metabolized in ways that can be used as opposed to showing up on the screen like we saw it like that. I love those brothers. I will continue to. I may not, and you've heard me say this before. I may not love everything that black people do, but I love black people.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love them brothers, and I love Sister Jada. I literally I love them. And this is an opportunity not for us to examine them, but examine us, examine ourselves, examine the ways in which the fuel of that moment had so much more energy to it than should have been. We have to begin to ask a question: where's the rest of that energy coming from?
Right, right. When we do that, when we say that, I recognize that in me, because I think that is a hard leap for a lot of people to do. It's much easier to be on the outside and react and say, oh, that is outrageous. And even if it is, and it seriously was, then to stop and say, my reaction to it actually has something to do with something I have not
Yes,
processed.
yes, that's
Right?
it. My like the way my
The
energy is
right,
moving,
whether it's,
yeah,
yeah.
whatever it is, we never stop and examine and play with that piece. Not
Yeah.
only do we not examine, stop and examine and play with it individually, we don't stop and play with it each other. We don't get into a room and just sit there with each other, let that energy work with it, moan with it, rock with it, whatever it is. You know, I, so you watch that thing happen, right? For me, this is for me. I watched that happen. Then I watch these two older brothers get around Will and try and do it. Then I hear about Charlemagne doing that piece, and then I see at the same place, at the same Oscar, you see two black men loving each other like crazy when you watch Samuel L. Jackson get the Lifetime Achievement Award
Oh,
and
yeah.
Denzel. Did you see the love in their eyes?
So much,
Did you did,
so much,
did you
so much
see
love. It was
did
so
you
beautiful.
did you see Samuel go to the lectern and get ready to talk and look back at Denzel and
Mm.
say "Shh," and walk back up to him and hug him again? That's black. That's always there.
Yeah.
And I would love to see, I would love to see Chris and Will and Jada come out of this with even a stronger relationship. But it's going to take slowing down, working those historical, intergenerational, persistent, institutional, and personal lived experiences. Slow it down so you can begin to discern things. And many of the trauma informed work that's out there now doesn't know how to work with race. It has no idea how to work with race. So let me just say this piece: the white body is so used to having deference paid to it that when they see two black men hurting and doing that to each other, they feel like their white gaze is warranted. GAZE. They feel like I should be able to say something about that because it was on my TV. And one of the things that I've been telling with a lot of because I've been doing a lot of podcasts. Well, one of the things that I've been saying is that the white gaze is really, in general, not helpful. But when there's rupture and repair in the black community, and you start to begin to give your opinion about it, it is not only not helpful, it is actually intrusive,
Mhm.
right? Because you get to pass judgment on their indiscretion, but you will never pass judgment on your ancestors' indiscretion. And what's setting up these ways, these kind of rape culture, toxic masculinity, only ways of being a man, hardness. I mean, we talk about hardness so much when it comes to men in general, but black men specifically, that it has crowded out in the larger context any sense of textually what tenderness is like between me and another black man.
Mm.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just like what what is in a society where the white body has deemed itself the supreme standard by which all bodies humanity shall be measured structurally and philosophically, how does that impact the black man's understanding of what it means to protect a black woman? Right? How does that invisible hand that we never want to kind of look at, how does that impact that? This last piece took me a long time to understand that there are ways, not a way, but there are ways to protect Black women, protect my mama, protect my daughter, right? There are ways to do that. Those ways are not just the physical brute force, the kind of projective energy that is so interwoven in this society. And so one of the ways I take care of Black women in my life is that I go to therapy, right? I do my practices every day. I don't cheat on my wife. I don't slap her. If I get into an argument with her and I try, I'm getting better at it. I try and go and repair it. I don't let shit. So this idea of taking care of Black women is not this paternalistic idea. It is an emergent idea that allows me to join with Black women, both in their pain and in their joy, right? And so I think that also showed up in the room. That's why you keep hearing them saying, "Keep my wife's name out your effing mouth." That's why he keeps saying it. And each time he says it, you hear more energy and more rage and more, I will destroy. You hear it. And if you say that's just about that joke, you don't understand Black people. Yeah. You don't understand what we've been through and how we've been conditioned by this stuff, right? The way his mouth and the way he was looking at Chris was like, "I will annihilate you."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That also broke my heart.
Yeah.
Right? That's not just true for Will. So.
Like I said in the beginning, this is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, but again, I think it's a conversation that's so necessary. And I do think that, regardless of what people feel in terms of, well, that's just between two men, I think this is, again, part of what we have to all understand is that there are distinctions in the experiences that we have. And if you don't understand it, it's ask questions or just don't have conversations for yourself about trauma. But, it's just like, a woman being assaulted and say, well, it has nothing to do with her being a woman. It does, because there's something that happens to her in the history of womanness and fragility and all of those things that it's not just an assault. It's an assault in a body that is a woman's body, and that's seen as a woman's body.
Exactly right.
So, and those are important things to be able to process. And again, it doesn't mean as the outsider that you don't have your own reaction to it. But I do want to go back to reactions, because I do think this is a really important part for people to look at is, if people looked at it and felt a loss of hope, if people looked at it and felt a level of defensive,ness, wanting to defend, wanting to point out who's right or wrong, if people looked at it and felt a strong degree of righteousness, I think each of those are really important to identify. What is my experiencing having right now, and why am I having this experience in this way?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a lot of this way that we're having it is a lot of what got locked in and conditioned in our own experience of trauma.
Yeah.
And I'm going to survive it by being strong and I'm whatever. And that's just
override
it.
Yeah, that's it.
And if you're like, oh, come on, I got better things to do. Let me get back to work. That is a response.
That's exactly right.
That's a survival response of like, move on, next. That's like not willing to look at something, not willing to let you experience your own emotion that you're having to it. I think this is such a missing part. And I do also think, and again, if I go back to just leaders, because so many people now have DEI departments and all of that, and they want to be able to have these kind of conversations collectively.
They can't. And let me say this. They can't.
Exactly.
They haven't built a container. The stuff that me and you were talking about in terms of how to handle this is cultural. We're talking about cultural things. How do you begin to see and create a container so the charge of race and the charge of paternalism and the charge of living in a rape culture, that can be dealt with? That can't be dealt with in most organizations, because most organizations don't even when I say charge to a lot of organizations, they don't know what that means. There's no textual way of them navigating it, right? What you're asking people to do, and what we're asking people to do, is start to begin to create a seed so intimacy can actually happen. These pieces, what you're describing in terms of what has to happen, is an intimate thing. And I don't mean intimate like mother's milk. I don't mean intimate like, something somebody does in the bedroom. I'm talking about intimacy where you allow people around you to see you behind your eyeballs. Most of us are unwilling to do that. And so this idea of lost hope, I don't, when I look at my people and I see just where I'm at right now, coming from my people who were a people and are a people who were raped for 250 years legally, right? The idea of losing hope, and I'm sitting here, me and you are sitting here talking about something, and we're not babbling and running up and down the street, and we're not, and you know what I mean? Like, there's something so resourced in my people that I never lose hope. I don't have hope in like, oh, I think white people are going to change and I think the system is going to change. That's not the type of hope I have. I have, when I look at where I'm at and where my people are at in terms of just us, right? That we can still laugh, that we can still create, jazz that looks like hip hop, that looks like words, that looks like art. You see what I mean? Like that looks like in the course of what we saw, that you also saw two Black men loving each other, right? That happened too. Watching that happened too. That is the standard. What you watched with Chris and Will was not the standard. The standard is what you watch Samuel L. Jackson and Denzel Washington do. The standard is when you watch Denzel and Tyler Perry walk over to that brother,
care for him,
and this is why I say the white gaze isn't helpful. And the adjacent white gaze isn't helpful. All of these people who are like, this should happen, that should happen, this should happen. You know what should happen? You should go quiet. That's what should happen first. For you, that you should go quiet first and interrogate why you didn't have any reaction to it or why you had an explosive reaction to it. Either one will allow you to begin to be tempered and conditioned around this stuff, as opposed to taking the move, whatever move that is, taking that and that being the standard. That's not the standard. The standard has to be for us to begin to slow the stuff down, because we can't discern all of that at the same time. So we have to slow it down for ourselves and look at it as opportunities to investigate, interrogate, and play with this stuff that we have ingested for over 400 years.
And when you say to be quiet, you're not saying shut down or get out.
That's right. Right. That's right.
You're saying to being present, like to really
to take the opportunity to notice that all of this energy that I'm expending, it can't be about Will.
Yeah.
It can't be just about Chris. It can't be just about Jada, right? And can I begin to condition myself? This is what I talk about in the Quaking of America. When you watch January 6th, and now January 6th did not spur you to learn more about what you saw. It did not spur you to go take a self-defense course. It did not spur you to go read 1619. It did not spur you to go take a weapons course because because you want to get over it and move along. And what you're doing is you're actually making yourself more unsafe because you're not interrogating the things that are showing up that are seminal, right? And not only seminal in our individual lives, but seminal in our cultural lives, that you don't spend time interrogating it. You have all of these ways of getting around it. And so when I'm saying be quiet, I'm saying when you go quiet, things start to quake. When you go quiet, things start to move or shut down or pull in or constrict. But because you so busy on TikTok making funny little memes about the pain of these two brothers, because you got your podcast and you can scream at the top of your lungs what you would have did if something like that happened to you and what you would have did, and you never investigate what is actually happening for you right now.
Yes. I think this is, it's sort of a conversation for us all to be in. What the work starts after the reaction.
That's exactly right.
But people want to stay in the reaction and keep talking about the reaction and keep validating the reaction and putting more data behind the reaction and having more points about the reaction and checking with other people. What was your reaction? That was my reaction. What was yours? And then deepening and embedding that reaction into, and then being righteous about that reaction and then being stuck in that reaction. And to me, I think this is so important. This is why I think, beyond just the moment that we're talking about between these men and examining it, I can feel so much pain for their own experience, the shame that must be present for them, like any situation that is catastrophic, the body goes into shock. You're not going to experience what really your experience is for maybe weeks from now. Chris had to get up and go into shows, and you've got to bring something to when you're in that. That I'm in front of people, I'm here for people, I'm creating something. That is really important. I'm glad that he has the support that he does to be able to have people that he talks to process, like he said, with somebody recorded him, right? He said, I'm still processing. That was so powerful. That is a man who's done some work to tell people. Woo,
Audrey, that was so powerful.
Yes.
Because what he said is, I need space.
Yeah.
Had he not gotten some work and some healing and some work like that, he would have just overrode it without any interrogation, without any investigation, without any of the slowing. And I believe communally, having other men and other women come around him and say, I see you. I love you. You were important to me. And that shouldn't have happened. Right? That thwarts the automatic override that we normally do in Black bodies and bodies of culture. We normally, our own personal stuff that we don't quite know how to work with, it has been beaten, raped into us that we don't pay attention to that because we got to get that cotton picked. We don't pay attention to that because we got to make sure that them sugar canes are picked. Do you understand what I mean? That these pieces have been interwoven and now look like culture in a people, now look like family traits in the family, now look like personality in a person. And we have to slow that down. And so do you remember when we was coming up, there was this thing that people used to say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
And it don't make me weak. It don't make me less than, because I get hurt by your words, because I get hurt by your actions. I am a human being, and when another human being, and specifically another Black man, does something to me, that matters in a whole different textural way. I tell people all that, this is not a secret. When I was coming up, I was sexually assaulted a number of times, right? It not the people, when people hear that, they go, oh, like this, it becomes this dramatic kind of centering. That's not why I'm saying that. I'm saying it because it moves you in ways that and when I say this for the rest of your life, I don't mean for the rest of my life. I'm looking over my shoulder because I've been doing work, but for the rest of your life, there is this thing that you have to interrogate. And I don't mean like interrogate hard. I mean, when something shows up, you have to push it through the embodied lens of, what's around that? That happened. Was the energy more? Is it tied to the historical? Is it tied to my personal? Like, what is that? And we don't do that. What we do is, well, let me say this. And for me, that has been both a painful process and one of the most rewarding processes that I think I've had, is that I had, like, when stump shows up about who I am as a man, is that working in the background on that, right? Am I making sense here?
Yeah, absolutely.
These pieces, is so much easier to say Will's a piece of shit than it is to, when that stuff stirs in me and I see that happen, I feel violated by watching that happen, and I'm having a vicarious reaction watching that happen. I'm having a secondary reaction to watch that happen. It is much harder to slow that down and call your friend up and say, hey, I'm off. Can you come over for a minute? I'm off. Let's just get on Zoom just so I can see your face. I don't need you to give me advice. I don't need you to, right? I just need to see your face, right? Yeah. That's what I hope this stuff churns in us, not just churning the kind of Pharaoh type stuff, but also churning the kind of resource and hope that that I think is always there in Black bodies. But I think when we've getting brutalized and weathered by this structure over and over and over and over and over again, it seems like we can't access because this stuff is so thwarting.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know you've been talking about the book and layering it into, which was so powerful, because again, I think that we really are in a place, instead of, again, reacting to what's going on in the world, allowing what's happening, because we're getting, punches right and left, and we don't seem to be able to take our breath before the next punch comes.
That's it.
And so I think this is,
and some of us have been taking punches for 400, 500
yeah, exactly years. Right. Or something that's happened, and some people have had.
Yes, that's right.
Absolutely. There's many things in which to look through other lenses, but 100% when you're talking about the Black community.
Yeah.
But I think this is, I love the being able to talk about the communal aspect, because I think this is an important part for us to examine our relationships, and for us to look at what we want to heal. And instead of bracing and taking the hits right now, I think each of these hits are an opportunity to get even more present in our bodies, to say, what am I feeling? What haven't I healed? What haven't I addressed? What have I been resisting feeling? What have I put all this in my life to distract myself from? What am I trying? Where is my actual voice?
That's exactly right.
Where is my actual voice? So I'd love to hear about yes, please.
Yeah. So one of the things, so over the past number of years, all of us in one way or another have had to contend with COVID, right? We've had to, and for 8 years we dealt with this, this person who gave voice to the pharaohness of this society, right? Gave voice to it. As a matter of fact, gave voice and room for it, right? In ways that I think we've seen before, but not marketed in quite the same way, right? And so And so then you talk about, like, right now, we still got in America, we still have, and nobody's talking about this, we still have 1,000 people a day dying from COVID,
Mm.
like right now, right? But we act like that's like, yeah, it's over, right? Um, there is a war, a looming war, could be a possible world war, right? And we just keep going and buying our sourdough bread and right and keep moving. There is a there is one of the things I say about COVID-19 is that before COVID-19, Black people dealt with COVID 1619. And so that's on top. And so COVID-19 and all this other stuff is on top of that. And one of the things I say is that there is a weight and a volume and a texture that all of us right now are dealing with.
Yeah.
Right. And we all know it. We all have this gripping in our face. We all have this bracing, right? That's all there. But we don't have any communal mechanisms by which to even look at that. There is, in a larger macro, there is no way to turn and look at that piece and slow it down. And that's why I say, in terms of us healing, in terms of America, we're going to have to begin to seed the ground and create a container so some of that work can happen. It's not happening right now. We don't have a culture around anti-Blackness. We don't have a culture around living embodied anti-racist. We don't have a culture around that. So what we want to do is give out little tips and this is what you should do and stuff like that, but it's not building culture, right? So therefore it doesn't, the capacity is only tangential as opposed to reverberatory, right?
Right.
And so for me, getting at this texture of the malaise and the weightedness of what we've gone through and what we have gone through as a not just a nation but a world. COVID-19 affected the world, right? And so we just act like, oh, now that we got the shots, that's cool. Right, with like that part is over.
Right.
And that's what I mean is that we don't have a culture that says no, when that happens we have to go back and look at it and get reps with it so we can continue to build capacity. We don't do that. And so in my book, The Quaking of America, I'm really talking about January 6th was a seminal moment for this country. And use a lot of times with seminal moments, what we do is we move along. We don't sit, we don't interrogate, we don't play with it, right? We want to get up from up underneath the charge of it. So we're willing to do anything to get around the charge of that, right?
Right.
And so for me, like you said, like I said to you earlier, if America is going to transform it all, it's going to have to begin to learn how to be intimate with things that cause it constriction and not look for the escape hatches every time. And so Quaking of America is my kind of like real kind of straightforward, clear-eyed view of what exactly we're dealing with in this country around race, white body supremacy, and pigmentocracy.
Powerful. I thank you so much for taking the time, Resmaa. I know your schedule is just completely packed right now with your book coming out and everything else and all the demands on you. I just thought it was so incredibly important to stop everything and have this conversation.
I appreciate you. I really do. I appreciate you because, when I got the call from you, I was running. And I was like, I really got no time. When I got to tell you, I was like, I got no time. I was like, no. You got to get on. And had it been anybody else, I wouldn't have done it. And I think it's an important thing. And I think it's an important that people been hearing all types of things about this. I think it's important that people hear about the tenderness pieces too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the heartbreak and the rupture and how do we cultivate a sense of repair with this and give people time to work with it. I think, like you said earlier, when Chris Rock said, "I'm still processing that was the most beautiful thing." Yeah. You are what he was basically saying to everybody. You ain't gonna rush me. and rush my way of working with this, because if I allow that to happen, then I'm probably going to be twisted up, and you ain't going to be there when I need you.
Yeah.
You're not gonna hold me when I need you. You're not gonna look at me and laugh with me and rock with me and do those pieces that I need to be done communally. You ain't gonna do that, because all you wanted to do was just say your piece and not deal with your own particular pieces.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the very open dialogue around heartbreak, because I think that is something that in the communal conversation, for us to be able to talk about, for us to stop avoiding, for us to address, and male, female, whatever you identify as, whatever the experience in work settings, all of it, we have to be able to talk about heartbreak.
And for real. That has to, like, when you do your stuff, do your organizational stuff, that has to be a thing. That has to be a real thing, right? Because people get their heart broke, like in a lot of these organizations, people get their hearts broken most of the time way before they quit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Way before they quit, right?
Yeah.
There is a breaking of the heart every day, and then finally people get tired of it.
Yeah, that's right. And we want to know that together we can heal together, that we can be there for one another. And that's important. And the moving on and let's get busy and all of that. Yes, there's things to do. We got to do things every day. And some of us a lot more than other people. I understand that, but it doesn't mean you can't feel.
And it doesn't mean you can't. So I have a tendency to not talk about feel as much as I do experience, because the experience is both emotional, sensate, urges, images, weight, texture, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean. We don't even have a container by which we can even talk about it in that way, right? And so the work that I'm trying to do is really, the somatic abolitionist work is really about slowly building the container so we can hold these pieces, as opposed to what we do now, and that is override it or go into warring and annihilation mode.
Yeah. Thank you, Resmaa. I appreciate you so much.
As always. Love you, sis. Talk to you soon.
Me too. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.